Okay, I'm sorry about that. It's good to be back together. It seems like it's been a long time since we have been together, and a lot has transpired with a lot of things for us to be discussing. So it's going to be challenging, but we will get through it all and make progress. Robin, may we have roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Hensick. Chair Stevens.
Here, is your mic on?
It is on. Vice Chair Scott.
Present.
Commissioner Hammond.
Here.
Commissioner Roughton.
Here.
Secretary Bockert.
Present.
Commissioner Rubis.
Here.
Alternate Quarterneck.
Here.
Commission Liaison Broyles.
Here.
Council Liaison Nyon.
Here.
And Council Liaison Rambo.
Here.
And our Student Route 66 Task Force Liaison is not here. But we certainly have quorum.
Thank you. It's great to have a quorum so we can begin our work. First, I just wanted to mention how shocked I know we all were to learn of the death of Paul. I can never say his name, Paul W. He was a wonderful man, a wonderful leader, and he did a lot for Wildwood. And so it's really, especially for all the work he did, Wildwood is a better place because he was here with us, and the world is better because he was part of us. So we hope we can follow in his footsteps. The minutes from the December 1st meeting. Pardon? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
On that same note, now I lost it. I apologize. Paul's wife sent me an email yesterday saying that on, let's see, Sunday, February 5th, over at the Lake Chesterfield Clubhouse, from noon to 4, they're going to have a celebration of Paul's life. And she wanted me to just pass it on to anybody that might be interested. So I'll forward the email to all of you, and details are on Trader's website. So if you'd like to attend, she'd be more than, like I said, she just may pass it on to anybody that may want to join us. Thank you.
I did attend the visitation and had a nice chat with she and with his mother. She was a delightful lady. So we, if any can attend, I'm sure they'd appreciate it. So may we have approval of the minutes? Are there any corrections or additions to the December 1st minutes? I had one which I have passed along to Robin. It's a typo on the 3rd page under Essen Log Cabin. The last sentence in the 2nd paragraph, it should read, he suggested he might come present to the commission instead of he suggest. The ED is just left off of it. That was the only one I had. Did anyone else have any? Then they are approved by general consent. Is there any public comment?
Madam Chair, there are none in attendance here in the room and none on Zoom either.
Okay. I think my ears are kind of plugged up. I've kind of had it in the head this week, so I'm having trouble hearing a little bit. Old business, Route 66 roadside park project update. There's a lot coming on.
All right, if I may, Madam Chair, I do have a presentation on this item or these 2 sub items this evening. So we did take another step forward in our Route 66 roadside park project process, in that SWT design presented to the Wildwood City Council during its work session on January 9th of this month. They gave a 5-minute overview of our final design concept for the park. You should all have that final presentation before you this evening. And at that time, council members did offer a few comments to us, which can be summarized as one, the park project should be added to the Wildwood strategic plan, the 5-year strategic plan. And two, there were several comments that suggested the splash pad feature might be a maintenance problem. We didn't spend too much time on it, but it was requested that it be revisited at the Wildwood City Council for more detailed consideration in the future. But we're suggesting tonight, the department is suggesting that we move forward with a phase 1 concept design from SWT. They have provided a proposal for our consideration this evening. It is in your packet. And the suggestion is that we continue to look at our final design concept and see how we might be able to move forward with this park project. I do know that I've heard some comments that cost might be a consideration at this point, given the large price tag. Sorry, I apologize. So that is what I have for next steps is one, we're suggesting that we do a phase 1 concept plan. 2, it's going to go before once we've developed that, go before the Parks Planning and Parks Committee, and then back to the City Council. And then 3, we're suggesting that we move forward with some fundraising ideas for the park project. And I have a presentation for you this evening. Do you have any questions before I go forward? Yes.
Have we decided what would be in phase 1, what would be in phase 2, and what would be in phase 3?
That the plan, that would be part of developing a concept for phase 1, would be determining what we're going to prioritize in the first round of improvements.
And that would be covered under this $5,100 charge from that's what it is.
$5,100, yes. It would be providing us with 2 conceptual design alternatives for a phase 1, going through a similar process of review with us, and then giving us an estimated cost opinion for that.
So are we then going to have a charge to develop phase 2 and another charge?
I believe as we go, actually, I'm going to have our director respond to that question.
Mr. Rubis, what I would say is based upon the city council's past budgeting through a 5-year capital improvements plan, we'll do a phase 1 and we'll have to work hard to fund that as far as I'm concerned. Phase 2 and phase 3, let's say the final stages, will probably be beyond that 5-year plan. And so for now, I would just focus on phase 1.
All right, any more questions before I go into raising the funds?
Is it too late to have a discussion about the splash pad, possibly substitute something we use year round versus just 2 months of the year?
I don't think it's too late to have that discussion. I think it would only benefit the project to move forward, thinking about where we might be able to bring that price tag down a little bit.
Interjected.
Okay. So as noted, we do want to be considering how we can supplement some of the costs for the Route 66 roadside park project. And so in your packet this evening, you should have received a memorandum from the department regarding some fundraising ideas. I'm just going to quickly roll through them this evening. First, with some potential grant opportunities we might apply for. You've heard about this one before. It is the Public Humanities Projects Grant, and it's given out by the National Endowment for the Humanities. We would start at this stage of the process with a planning grant And the planning would largely be around the interpretive features of the park. So really figuring out what would be on that Wildwood timeline, the interpretive signage, possibly identifying a structure to replicate for the comfort station. We talked about replicating it after an era service station. So things of that nature would be explored, but we would be doing it from a pretty high level of scholarship around the humanities. Once a plan was in place, we could then go forward and apply for the implementation grant, which offers, so the planning grant offers up to $75,000. The implementation grant offers anywhere from $50,000 to $400,000 plus an additional $100,000 for a position in the humanities. And then finally, there is a chair special award, which is up to $1 million. There is no cost match required to receive these funds if we are awarded the grant. And the next deadline is August 2023. In order to be considered, we must incorporate at least 3 humanities themes with equal representation across the humanities. So looking at history, geography, literature, those types of indigenous studies, those types of things would be explored here. It is recommended, I did speak with a grant program officer last year, that we have a grant team of members from various institutions across the area. So we'd probably want at least 2 PhD level members with expertise in various humanities areas. Perhaps local teachers, local historians, planners, obviously. They do highly recommend that we get the designers involved early. And they stressed many times to me in the conversation that if we can get some underrepresented histories and persons involved, such as indigenous persons, that would help our application as well. And in fact, I have been speaking with a couple historians in the area and putting together a list of potential contacts for assembling such a team. Once we had applied for the planning grant, assumed that we got awarded the planning grant and had a plan in place, we could pursue an implementation grant. The implementation grant would fund interpretive signage for the park. It would fund a timeline etched into the walkway. It could even fund that comfort station, the audio components, and consultant fees. However, it would not fund any art projects of any kind because there is another grant for that. So no murals. Though we could pay for that another way, obviously. There are some other grant opportunities available out there that the park project would be eligible for. I have economic development. However, it should be noted that Village Green is presently the primary and priority focus of the city applications at this time.
For all 3.
For all 3. Yep. So that's why we want to look at the Route 66 roadside park, maybe a different way. And so that's where fundraising comes in. And the first thing we wanted to research and investigate was, would crowdfunding or crowd granting be a potential way to fund this park? So if you aren't familiar with crowdfunding, basically that is grassroots funding for a public project. So it's really making an appeal to the local community and having everyone contribute just a little bit because they have a stake in this park. Crowd granting is slightly different. It's leveraging the grants that different institutions might offer. It could even be, city council funding, but challenging the community to meet a certain amount to receive that grant. And then basically that's showing the grant funders that there's enough community support to make this a worthwhile investment. So Patronicity is the primary platform out there that I could identify for crowdfunding and crowd granting specifically for public projects. It was established in 2013 and has grown in its reputation. It works primarily out of Michigan, though they have partnered with organizations in Indiana, in Massachusetts, and several other places as well. I don't know that they have another partner in Missouri at the moment, but they are pretty well spread across the nation. They actually innovated the concept of crowd granting, so it's built into their model. They specifically work with grant funders to build this partnership between institutions with grant funds and then engaging the community and doing this crowdfunding. It provides one-on-one coaching to platform users, so they actually coach you all the way through your campaign. And according to their research, at least it has a 91 success rate, or at least it did in 2021, which is very, very good for this type of fundraising. There is a cost to use their service, a 5% admin fee plus a 3% online donation fee. However, donors are allowed to cover it as part of their donation using the platform. They also provide other opportunities to at least log, like if you're doing fundraising activities where maybe you're collecting cash at an event, you can actually log it into the platform so you can show that you are reaching your target from these other funding streams. So I thought that was pretty cool as well. GoFundMe, I basically just wanted to give you a compare and contrast because I think everyone here has probably heard of GoFundMe. It's more of a traditional crowdfunding platform. However, it's not targeted towards public projects. So it's not, it's really fundraising for anything and everything. It can be personal fundraising. So it just does not have that niche. It does not have an admin fee, but it does have a, I think it's 2.9 plus 30 cents transaction fee. And I believe I just recently did a donation over it and I was able to cover that fee as well as the donor. All right, so some benefits to doing a crowdfunding campaign or a crowd granting campaign is that it can increase local engagement and ownership around a project. It provides evidence to grant funders that there is interest. So if you can show that people are actually willing to donate money to a project, it can give you some leverage with grant opportunities. Donors do give when there is a connection to a project. We've done some pretty broad engagement, especially getting the school district involved and having the students involved. So I think we have a lot of local engagement to work with. And that's why I think we do have some Route 66 relationships to leverage. However, fundraising takes time and staff energy and all of that. So that's definitely a consideration. If you're going to do it, you really have to put the time in to make it successful. Some other fundraising ideas. We could have a built-in donation request at Big Chief Roadhouse. So every time someone goes for a meal there, maybe at the end they say, you know, would you like to donate $5 or $1 to the Route 66 Roadside Park Project? That could add up. We could sell Wildwood Route 66 t-shirts and dog bandanas at various events or stores. I was thinking, especially with the school being so involved, maybe we could use Friday night high school football games as an opportunity to do some fundraising. There have been, given that we are on a bicycle Route 66, there are people who bicycle, like do these long range bicycle trips and then have people pledge towards a certain cause that they're bicycling for. So if we could get a volunteer, maybe we could raise funds that way. Someone had the idea for a Route 66 Film Festival. Donation jars at various Route 66 landmarks and businesses. And then finally, leveraging the fact that we have multiple city events per year to do some fundraising. And that's all I have for that particular subject. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Does the city ever come across all that state donation? City, when somebody dies and they leave part of their estate to the city of Wildwood, does that happen?
That question, please.
Certainly. Commissioner Roughton asked if there has been any bequests of money or other assets on someone's passing that had been a Wildwood resident. And for the most part, no. We've not received anything except Pertner Park. Miss Yost was kind enough on her passing to donate 27 acres of ground on Hinken Road. And that's the only example I can provide to you.
And the question was, is there any roads in that area? And it sounds like no, at this point.
Not so much, but we've never really made a public outreach that remember us if you have land or if you have something you'd like to see Wildwood accomplish. That would be a legacy that you could leave to the community far beyond your life. We've never got out and actually,
So
yes, sir.
thank you.
Any other questions?
My cell phone. In terms of the grants, it seems to be a lot of the emphasis on the grants is the interpretation. And I do think the timeline walk, as you mentioned, is a critical point of that. And I do think that an early development of that walk and to display it and to show what can be on, because I think that's what's going to sell this as an interpretive element, historical. And I don't know how much more we can bring into it with, you know, indigenous villages and everything else. But I think a lot needs to go onto that walk and it needs to be as visible as possible. And I do think that rather than just saying, okay, here's going to be our timeline walk and we'll work it out. But I do think we need to develop the design of that probably early in order to get the grant, some more grant support on this.
Yeah, I think the interpretive piece is certainly what makes this park in particular a class of its own compared to other city park
Yes.
projects. And I think it opens the door to some of these more unique opportunities. And the hope is if we pursued the projects for the humanities grant, that we would move into that implementation stage and get a pretty nice chunk of funding towards those elements. But yes, I agree with you that there is some planning to do there.
We just
And
can't say, oh, this is our interpretive walk. We've got to show them what it is.
right.
Yes, Chris.
Is there action you're looking for from us on this topic tonight?
I think I was just trying to take your temperature a little bit about these ideas. What stood out to you as a particularly good approach? There's a lot of different approaches we could take, but we need to spend our time wisely. So from your perspective, what hits home, what doesn't, and you know, where should we be looking for some of this supplemental funding?
Jim?
Every time go to Dearborn's or Schnucks, they always say, would you like to round up for some,
Mhm.
some are good, some are questionable.
Sometimes it's better.
Is that something that we could pursue?
I think it's certainly something we could ask them. I think the idea behind getting Big Chief Roadhouse involved is that you would get people who were pretty excited about Route 66 to, every time someone came and had a meal there, they'd have that opportunity to tack on a donation to their meal.
Have we had any conversation with Rohan?
I think we wanted to get this temperature first, and then if that's your direction, I can move forward.
Debbie?
I'm thinking besides just Big Chief is why not, hit Cheryl up at Larry's Tavern or even the antique Three French Hens folks, because they're right across the street from the location. So they might be agreeable to that roundup or have donation jars or whatever.
Absolutely.
Dan?
I think it's gonna take some analysis on our part. Because if we decide to spend serious resources on a roundup, it's at work versus going to some of these other grants and how much time. So we need to look at how much dollar per time. Kind of. I guess the other question, is there a Route 66 actionable group?
I believe there is, but I didn't get the sense that they were very helpful for this purpose.
Okay.
Because I've done a lot of research on that, because obviously those would be the key organizations to go to. But from what I can tell, there's not a national entity right now. I know the National Trust for Historic Preservation has a working group around Route 66 right now, particularly given the anniversary. But there was a bit of a loss when the national park funding for Route 66 preservation ran out. And I haven't seen any renewed funding this year for that. So that's kind of my long answer to your question. Is there's a lot of groups that are thinking very hard about this, and there might be opportunities in the future, but right now there's not.
Looking at rounding out for couple cents on every meal that's sold. I think we should be looking for bigger targets, maybe a corporate approach. Corporate industries are there in Wildwood that are represented here, people that are going to pay with it. That's a way to do that.
And also, I would hope that if we do get some kind of corporate help, that they don't expect their name to be etched into something in the park, I mean, hopefully we could have some way to acknowledge them without permanently acknowledging them,
Well, they'd probably be seeking some form of recognition,
Right.
is my guess.
Yeah, it's hopefully not forever in the concrete or something.
But they do it in the zoo all the time. Their names in 6
Little
by 6
brick or
brick.
something. Yeah, for something little.
I do think, I think that's a great idea for bringing in more funds. I would just stress that the pro of some of the crowdfunding elements or the grassroots fundraising is that you're really building that community pride and ownership in the project as you go along. So a mix of both approaches is probably a good idea.
Would there be any possibility about putting a sign, future site of Route 66 Roadside Park on the property to draw people's attention to, this is where it's going to be, and this is what this plot of grass is going to become?
What about our sign ordinance?
Our code actually makes provisions for projects that are coming in the future. I would say as long as we met the size and height requirements, we could consider that.
I think that would be one way to get it out in front of people. Because I know it myself, being told where this was going to be when we first started talking about it, when we first acquired the land down there, I couldn't put it in my mind exactly where it was. And so, we've been talking about this with people, and I'm not sure that many know really where it's going to be. And so that might kind of jack things up a little bit.
A nice rendering of one of the views that SWT has provided would be nice on that sign to show what it's supposed to look like. And I think it would
Mhm.
would turn some people
Yeah.
on. And you mentioned things that Big Chief, would you like to add another $1, $5? What about the other businesses in downtown Wildwood? Would they be open? Would Benedetto's? Would ask them? I don't know what. That's the other, there's the, across the way, there's the breakfast and lunch place and Subway and that approach. Subway may not because that's a chain, but the locally owned ones. I mean, I think they have as much involved in Route 66 as anybody else does.
I think that's a great idea. And I think it's certainly worth asking the question. I think the more involvement we have, the better.
Yes.
Yeah, real quickly. Robin, you gave us a whole lot of fundraising options. They're all great and they're all going to take some of your time to do make the effort. So I want to follow up on Dan and Jan's observations. I have sponsored an animal at the zoo for decades. And every year send them money and tell them, no, I don't need another plush toy or anything like that. And they put a tiny little nameplate in a big kiosk with a roof on it that says, thank you for the donation. And that's really all it is. And if we could do something like that, but a little bit bigger sign that says Benedetto's, future home of the Route 66 park. Thank you, Benedetto's. Thank you, Subway. Thank you, First Watch. Thank you, this, thank you, that. We could maybe get, a few more bucks for that because we're talking about this Hometown Heroes banner thing. And there's a lot more interest from the companies, from the businesses around here than there are in the retired military people that, want to put their banner up on the pole. And so, we might get some traction there and it might be some, a decent source of funds.
Yeah.
If we put a sign there anyway, we might as well, thank people in advance. So worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Another thing for you to do.
Yeah.
Great idea.
In terms of patronicity, when they're doing kind of public fundraising for public projects like this, do they typically have a deadline for when they want to receive their funds? And if they don't meet their match by that deadline, does it all the money go back? Like, what do you know what the standard approach is for that?
So I think you have the option to do it that way, but most people do not. Most people take what they get. They do recommend that you ask for smaller chunks. It's not recommended that you go after like a, $500,000 for a phase one, for example. But sorry, what was the first part of your question? Because I think I'm missing one.
I forgot now too. So it really was, I guess, in terms of, do you typically set a deadline and all or nothing type approach is what I was curious about.
It's not an all or nothing approach unless you want it to be. And typically you do set a deadline and create some urgency towards the end of the deadline, maybe pull off a, dance until we get funded type campaign or something of that nature.
Yeah, I would see doing something like that plus have it all as one campaign, but you've got an online donation, you've got a tip jar, whatever you call it, at supporting businesses that want to do that. I don't know enough about it, but my assumption around like rounding up for Deerbergs or rounding up at Schnucks is they are typically doing those types of things for tax purposes. They're collecting money and the donation aspect of it. So they're oftentimes charitable, or if not always charitable. And I don't think this necessarily would be. We're not a not-for-profit type of thing. So I don't know how open the bigger businesses would be, but absolutely. I think a crowdfunding or a crowd granting campaign plus local businesses and whatnot would be a great option.
Yeah, and the other thing Patronicity will do is they'll tap their larger network. So they might be going out there and trying to line up additional grants to supplement the crowdfunding piece. They would probably be promoting our project across their networks. So even outside of our local community, I don't know how helpful it would be, because again, they're not really centered in Missouri. But that's part of what they do is they provide that extra assistance all the way through your campaign. So I thought that was a really nice piece. There's clearly, there's clearly more of a social mission associated with the platform.
Elizabeth?
Thank you. Edward Jones, over the years, have always promoted community. And I would say we have a few agents in the vicinity of our town. So I think that would be of these financial advisors. So I think it would behoove us to go forward and at least contact them and see if they wouldn't come together as a group and make some donations toward this project.
And yeah, part of the crowdfunding campaign would be identifying some of those larger funding funders and then leveraging that funding at key moments, like boosting, so-and-so just donated 2,000 or they're going to match in the next 24 hours, every dollar you spend or something of that nature. So they do recommend that you do a lot of pre-planning before actually releasing your campaign to identify what institutions might partner with you, what bigger funders might partner with you, and trying to line that all up so that you can, boost excitement all throughout.
Expect that this is a website or something that would be dedicated to the Wildwood Road Society Park. So you have to educate the people that this is where they need. To go to make their donations.
And they make it really easy to donate, just like a GoFundMe. So you can share it through your social media channels. You can promote it at various events on the website. And they have I put together a packet of materials. There's a lot of guidance from other organizations that have done similar things. I think for a while, the National Parks and Recreation Association had their own platform. And so they have a toolkit that they provide for this type of park project fundraising.
Chris?
Is there any threat or potential of Village Green doing any sort of crowdfunding, or has that ever come up as a discussion point? I realize you mentioned potential grant conflicts and the focus for Village Green on those three particular grant options. I guess the question is there a risk that a bigger project comes along for crowdfunding that the city might leverage and this goes to the wayside? Or has it ever been talked about? I don't know.
To answer your second question first, Commissioner Hammond, it's not been discussed. And the reason being is I view the crowdfunding, crowd granting to be a long process just because of the nature. We are in a position with our town center that we need a location for our events sooner than later. And so that's why the city council has identified any grant opportunities, at least in the short term, be focused on Village Green. That way, if Village Green begins in phase one, we'll have a place for our concerts, celebrate Wildwood, et cetera.
Dan?
Two things. One, consider the possibility of using tax roll to prioritize targets. In other words, what revenue is coming into the county, who's paying the most in descending order. So that's somebody to go after the deep pockets. And then the second thing would be, I've used this in the past, either a electronic board or a thermometer, goal thermometer. So maybe at the site, there's a thermometer that says, here's a goal of $1 million. So far, we're at 200,000. Please help. Here's the website. And then we could use that thermometer many.
Great suggestions.
Jim,
Will we need city council approval for fundraising and crowdfunding?
yes.
Yes, very much so.
You know, pretty much anything.
Any other questions or comments on this? Have we helped you?
Yes, you have given me some great direction. Thank you very much. Is there anything that I should not even explore?
If I may.
Yes.
Again, this takes a lot of work. And would a separate committee that work on this and to put the legwork in a volunteer committee rather than paid city staff be the right way to do this? I don't know how much time and burden this is placing on our city staff. I've got a feeling it's extensive. And would the legwork better be done by a volunteer committee? Which, by the way, I'm not volunteering for.
I was just going to say. if
Yeah,
you are-
I'm not,
if you
I'm
are
suggesting it,
volunteering-
I'm not volunteering for.
It is recommended that if you are going to really pursue crowdfunding as a strategy, that you put together a team. So that it's not just one person or, one institution even. It recommends, like, I think probably one of the first contacts I would make if we were to go forward with this is reaching out to my contact at Rockwood School District, who's the communications director there, and, seeing if there might be some partnerships. But it would help to have probably like a fundraising committee of sorts.
Anything else?
I agree. with
Dan?
I agree with.
Dan, can you get a little closer to your mic?
I agree with the committee approach, but it can't just be a bunch of people trying to do the right thing. It needs to be accountants, it needs to be marketing people, it needs to be school people, it needs to be people with skill sets that can make this happen.
Well, you probably don't want too many people involved
Right.
to like, they only recommend like, 2 to 3 people and just a lot of organizational buy-in.
But they gotta have some parts power. It's my only comment.
Well, yes, that's why I said reach out to communications at some of our partner institutions. If there were a couple of very dedicated individuals from this commission, that might help. Maybe the student task force is a key element of this. So it's something to be explored in depth as we go further. All right. Well, thank you so much for your comments. And I believe that's all I need on that subject this evening. Thank you.
The Student 66 Task Force update?
Well, I guess you're stuck with me this evening.
It could be worse.
The Student Route 66 Task Force did meet last December, on December 9th. And at that time, they selected 2 targets for events for this spring for Route 66 to drum up excitement. One event is a month-long Route 66 scavenger hunt along our corridor. So we have a list of clues up and down Route 66, and we're hoping to get a lot of excited people doing a bit of a treasure hunt there. Our second event is that Route 66 drive-in. Unfortunately, my hopes and dreams were crushed a bit in that we will not be having that event at Wildwood Middle School. However, we have done drive-in events before in that field next to B&B theaters. So we think that might be a good second location, and we're going to be investigating that. But those are our two events. We're thinking that it will be in the month of April. And that's all I have to report. We will be meeting with the task force on Tuesday of next week to plan all this out.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Anyone, any questions for her? Madison Valley, formerly Old Slave Road Memorial Plaque.
All right, you get me for this one too. Old Slave Road officially became Madison Valley at the city council meeting on January 9th. And as a part of that decision, they also added the element that we would provide a plaque, a memorial plaque, dedicated to Elijah Madison. Not exactly on Madison Valley Road, but in public right of way around it. And they gave us a deadline, the end of 2023, to
That's-
do this project.
Not much time.
Well, given that it's not that much time, we figured that we should at least start identifying project steps with you this evening. And so what we came up with is that next month, I am hoping to have research completed as to various memorial plaque styles to choose from, and a cost estimate for each. And potentially a draft of content, but we'll see about that. And then identifying a couple safe locations in the public right of way where we might install it. Let's see, so that's steps 1 through 3. Number 4, we are hoping to establish a broad review and comment process for this content. So get the surrounding communities involved and various stakeholders that would be interested in this project, and then provide ideas for an unveiling ceremony to City Council. So 5 steps. Our objective throughout this project will be to involve the community as much as possible as we go forward, so that we are very sensitive to what that community consensus is. If you have any questions, I am
As
available
to
at
the
this time.
type of sign to be determined, are we thinking of having it like the community signs that are already up? Are we going with a different design? Or are we trying to stay consistent with everything in one design?
I think that is certainly one option that we were going to explore with this commission.
Jim?
How many people live on Madison Valley? How many residents?
So 9 or 13 homeowners?
Filed for the name change by property owners. I think there were 9 or 10.
9 or 10 in total.
Households, not individuals, correct?
So
Awfully quiet here.
hopefully this commission is excited to embark on this project with us this year. And I look forward to some of the discussion we'll be having that will be a little bit more substantial than this evening next month. However, if we did miss a step, please say your piece now so that we can get that corrected.
Or in January, city council, I got approved atmosphere friendlier there than it was. I came to the assembly and there were a lot of people very much against that sign.
And Commissioner Hensick, I will first ask if council members Nyan or Rambo would like to respond to that, but when the final passage did occur, there was one comment at the public participation, and it was not necessarily positive.
My impression was that the main objection was bringing traffic to formerly quiet street. And not necessarily the safety of pulling off or anything like that. It's just that people didn't want a bunch of people swarming their neighborhood. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think the positives of recognizing people are uncomfortable with this, and because we need to have it both ways. And so we've already talked about that. And so the positive of making sure that we honor the history is seen by most of the folks that I've spoken to outweigh the negative of changing the name. And so there's always going to be folks that aren't completely satisfied, but I think it was more modest concern than you might be thinking. So I'm hoping that we get the admin and public works folks involved early on, so they pick an appropriate spot where people can pull off. I don't think Wild Horse Creek Road is a great place to put a marker. I think it probably ought to be in the community. I suggested back to the church or something like that, but I guess it's up to Robin to figure it out. So,
Well, I appreciate your idea there.
Tracy?
I think the main, I mean, if you disagree, but I think the main thing against it was some people were saying, we want to honor the history, and they did want to not change the name because they felt like that was taking history away. The other feedback I heard was because it was called Madison Valley, instead of using his full name, why aren't we calling it by his full name if we're really trying to honor him as an individual? So I think that's why the consensus was not just a plaque saying his name, but giving some history behind it so that his name is not forgotten, and the whole, because if you just say Madison Valley, that kind of, you might not realize it's named after an individual. So
Right.
once all that was kind of ironed out and everybody agreed that, yeah, there would be more description than just saying, one little plaque, like he lived from this date to that date or whatever, I think then everyone was fine with it.
It seemed pleasant, was numbers and surprised by it, but atmosphere of that room. Not good, but I'll get worked out.
But isn't this plaque would go up in public right of way?
Yeah.
The only
That is
public
correct.
right of way around there is the right of way of Wild Horse Creek Road. All of those other roads going back in there are all private. There's no public right of way. So the plaque would have to be out along Wild Horse Creek Road somewhere. I'm just thinking at the turn in where you turn into the road there.
Sure.
You put it there and there's not much traffic. You could pull into that pull in and read the plaque and get in your car and then go on. But it would be there. It wouldn't be back further in the down the drive because that's all private property. So I would think I don't see a problem with the location. It's got to be along Wild Horse Creek Road.
Yes.
Jim?
Would it be better for the admin and public work committee to be the arbiter of where it should be placed, since they're gonna take the heat for it?
I did already have an informal discussion about getting together with our Public Works Department with the director just before this meeting today. So they will certainly be involved in choosing some potential locations. If it is the direction of this committee, we can also explore some maybe out of the box locations. Maybe it doesn't have to be exactly at the general location of the road. I don't know what the feeling is, if we should explore some of those other locations or not.
Joe?
Commissioner Rubis, I do want to emphasize that the Administration and Public Works Committee of City Council was the primary decision maker regarding the name change. When Mr. Brown, our Director of Public Works, and the Department of Planning had a discussion, the Administration and Public Works Committee, at least from my impression, thought that the best location to provide options to the committee, then to City Council, would be Historic Preservation Commission. And that was premised off the success of our historic markers. And so I think what the commission can do is to provide them good, well thought through options for the content, for the location, and then pass them on to the committee and then City Council. So you'll be able to help them in a great deal by kind of being that sieve that takes the universe and makes something that's, I think from their perspective, reasonable and easy to make determinations from. Thank you.
Yes, Rob.
Very quickly. So since we don't have much time, what's the best way to bring possible locations back to us so we can help make a determination instead of, us recommending in a vacuum? I don't feel competent to recommend a location because there's too many other factors. So how can we help with that and shorten the timeline?
When I asked the question I just asked, I was just saying, is there interest in this commission of exploring locations outside of the immediate vicinity of the road? So that's just a very general question based on your comment earlier about potentially putting the marker, closer to, I'm assuming Union Baptist Church.
Yes.
Great. Yes.
There's no ideal location. And I would rather know what the public works department suggests than just wing it. I think we have much more input on the content. Got to get that right and maybe choose this out of the sign, but the location.
Well, my objective was to bring back several potential options for this commission to consider. My question is really just a very broad question of, do we want to also explore locations outside the immediate vicinity of Madison Valley?
I'd just like to provide my feedback, and I think it absolutely makes sense to keep it in the immediate vicinity. And I don't know that it does the right honor for Elijah Madison to put it in Village Green when Madison Valley is miles away. So to me, I think it makes sense to be around it. I understand the potential public or homeowners' concerns about traffic, but at the same time, we don't see that. And I don't know if there's any way to validate that to the homeowners. Like, people aren't stopping at the historic city markers every day in packs of 10 and reading the signs. They're just not. So that being said, not in my backyard is always an issue. So but I like it close to resemble
Kurt?
the area.
I agree. Doesn't, to me, serve the purpose of putting it somewhere remote. But that's the site is. Be close right away at One Horse Creek Road. And
Jim?
Could we get our police department to kind of survey the area and see if they might have a couple of spots that they're looking at it from a safety standpoint.
I think what we might do is just put together like an internal task force involving members of our police and also public works and planning, and see what we come up with.
Steve?
Isn't it true? Madison Valley does not connect to Wild Horse Creek Road. Is that not true? Isn't the road that actually connects there? I can't think of the name now, but it's a loop road that comes in and comes back out onto Wild Horse Creek Road. And then I believe Madison Valley, about 100 yards or 50 yards in, splits off of that road. Is that not correct?
The location of Old Slave Road has always been dual signed with Spiceberry Lane.
Well, Spiceberry, yes.
Yeah. And so I think your description is very accurate. I think you enter on Spiceberry Lane and then they kind of merge off. formerly Old Slave Road went to the right or north. Spiceberry does the loop, I believe.
Any other questions or comments?
Real quick.
Behind you.
Joe?
Yeah, just real quick. We've had these same issues with 3 or 4 of them. You guys have done an excellent job sorting your way. And with your guidance, with suggestions you bring, and maybe some suggestions with us, we can narrow it down to 2 or 3. But you guys have always picked the place with the least amount of resistance. It's worked out very well.
Well, certainly it's kind of you to say, and there's a couple of them that obviously we had to take a location that probably wasn't the best, but we made it work. The only option that I want to offer tonight, and hopefully it'll show up on the information we provide you at the February meeting, is, as you know, Wild Horse Creek Road, at least the eastern boundary of its right-of-way, borders Babbler State Park. Now, separating the park property from the roadway right-of-way is Wild Horse Creek. But as you go a little further to the north, there is an option of maybe putting something in Babbler State Park along the edge of right-of-way. And so I think one of the things we'll do between now and February is contact the park superintendent, explain the importance of this particular monument, and see if they'd be willing to at least consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Joe, you could have saved us a lot of time.
Thank you. We will bring back some options for you to consider at the next meeting.
Okay. Moving on then to Wildwood History Book. Robin, you're on.
All right. So this is a project we've been making some progress on lately. We have finished the copy edits to the book, at least for the first chapters. The final chapter is before you this evening. Ms. Von Gruben has had her say, and I am currently in the process of taking all of these different perspectives and giving a final edited copy to our graphic designer. She's already worked with chapters 1 and 2. I'm just about done with chapter 3, and I hope by next week it will all be to her. So then she will be moving on to the book reformatting. Yay. This is a big deal. So before you this evening, I have 2 items. One is that exciting last chapter of the book, celebrating 25 plus years of Wildwood. So that is included in your packet this evening. I also shared the link with you yesterday. If you would like to give me if you'd like me to give a presentation of it this evening, I can. Otherwise, I will just let you spend some time with it over the next week and provide me some feedback. But if you have any comments to share right now, they are certainly welcome.
Well, just glancing at it here this evening, I'm pleased at the sharpness of the pictures. I think that's going to be a real plus.
I worked long and hard. I think that was probably the most time consuming aspect of this, was trying to identify the best possible pictures for each event over the course of the city's history. And not everything was cataloged and very easy to find either. So I do hope you are pleased with what you are seeing this evening. If there's anything that you recommend, I try to find a better picture. Please let me know. I am very, very happy to receive any feedback you might have. However, one comment that Ms. Von Gruben made today after reviewing it, and she did express that she thought it turned out very well. However, she suggested that we might be able to honor Paul W. in some way by inserting a sentence into the Tour de Wildwood photo description. saying something along the lines of the late HPC Commissioner and Chair Paul Wachowski was instrumental in the origination of this event, bringing cyclists to the city of Wildwood to experience the area's incredible beauty along with the challenging road course. So she gave that as a draft sentence in tribute.
Yeah, great.
It sounds like you agree with that,
Yeah.
so I will add that sentence accordingly. And you are welcome to comment on it. All right, well, if there are no further comments, then I will move on to the project schedule. There is a new updated project schedule for this project. The holidays slowed us down a bit, as well as the substantial edits offered to the book. We actually went back for chapter 1. We contacted Joe Harrell again. He gave us some comments. Dr. Mary Andino then commented on those comments after editing it the first time. So we've really been doing a back and forth here that I think is going to make a better product at the end of this, and it's worth doing. However, that did push us back. And so now we are looking, and I think it makes sense, given this last photo essay, we're now looking at Celebrate Wildwood 2023 as the target launch date for the book. And I really do believe we are on track this time with the timeline and where we are. So hopefully everybody is happy with that target date. Again, I think it does make sense. We ended the book with celebrating 25 plus years of Wildwood. Makes sense to launch it at Celebrate Wildwood. But if you have any comments, I would love to hear them at this time.
Joe.
And to a certain degree, I believe Ms. Keefe is being modest, but I think the photo essay and the descriptions that she prepared were well beyond my expectations, and I think provide a nice finish to a wonderful book. I also would note on the project schedule, there is a date well before the Celebrate Wildwood event that I think will be very exciting for all of us. And that is when the publisher, Amazon, sends us 2 proofs in June. And for the first time, we'll be able to see it not in all of its, let's say, less than glorious appearance, but something that actually will probably be the book after the edits are done on the proof that we'll be able to finally distribute to the community. So I think that's pretty exciting. And if you're counting, that's only about 4 months away.
So we are getting there.
About $100 book. And $5 of it goes for the book. That'd be $5.
Well, that is certainly an idea.
Hey. I suppose we go forward with the work program update.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had 2 updates this evening for the work program that I wanted to highlight. You've heard the rest of them already. We did post the Essen Log Cabin RFQ. We did that on Monday, and we shared them with that list of architectural firms that we provided you. We sent it out to our list, which sends it out to the contractor community. It's posted on the website. It's in our vestibule. If you would like to share it, there is a link on the Essen Log Cabin page on the historic preservation section of the website. So feel free to review that final RFQ and share it if you know of firms that might be interested and qualified to do the work. I would say that Pattern and Ives has already expressed interest, and it sounds like they will be submitting a proposal. The second update is not really an update, just letting you know that I am on the research for the historic building surveys. That will be an important project this year. So my first step is researching exactly how many surveys that we need to do, how many buildings are meeting that 75-year threshold. And then I'll be bringing that information to you and requesting bids for the work. So that's where that is. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions for anything that is on our current work program?
Did the parking pad get installed for Orville?
Well, I have some good news and bad news. The Gailey family, long-time residents of the Wildwood area, Glenn retired. Retired before we could get the parking pad in. The good news is we have 2 competent contractors that we've identified, and we've already had discussions with them.
Okay, good. Anyone else? Robin?
Well, that's all I have on that subject. So thank you.
Okay. Turning the page over. 2 items under new business. Westland Acres. I think it's exciting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, tonight, Mr. Newberry, Ms. Keefe and I prepared for you a memorandum relating to the historic community of Westland Acres. The reason the memorandum was prepared tonight is that over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, Mr. Newberry and I have been getting an increasing number of calls about potential development of certain lots collectively the community than we have in the past. Those calls have indicated to the department that there is an increasing interest in the potential for that community to change. Positive change, certainly, but to change. And as you know, the Westland Acres discussion has been on our work program for now at least 2 years, last year and this year. So Ms. Keefe, Mr. Newberry, and I thought it was appropriate that we kind of elevate that particular item and start looking at it with a little bit more enthusiasm, so to speak, and that we get started on something. So tonight, the first and foremost thing is I think we need to basically work this through our mayor and city council, and then ultimately the community itself. And so tonight, I'm just kind of letting you know this is going to become more of a priority given the interest in properties in the Westland Acres area. And first and foremost, I think we need to advise the mayor and city council of this priority, if it's acceptable to the commission, to make it such. And then at the next meeting, talk about what might be the best approach to engage the community itself before we get too far along. Assuming we know what they want or what may be best for the community. We want the community to tell us that first. And so tonight I'm asking for an authorization, so to speak, to kind of elevate this particular item to a priority amongst the commission and its future meetings, and then prepare a memorandum for you at the next meeting, kind of talk about how we engage the community and ensure the city council and the mayor are components of every decision that's made. Thank you.
So you would need us to have a motion for you to proceed with this.
Yes, I would like a motion since it's going to be an element on all of the agendas in the future for future meetings.
Jim,
I'll make the motion to go ahead and proceed. Second.
who's second? Alan? Is there any discussion, Dan?
With the caveat that community drive the city,
Well, certainly, I think that,
and that's what you were talking.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I like
the
the,
people in this room don't have anything talking about where they're going and how they're going to get there. We can support it, but we need to listen.
and part of this too is when the discussion about the name change on Old Slave Road to Madison Valley, a lot of the city council members and others reached out to the Westland Acres community. Again, a historically African-American community. And we engaged with the pastor of Union Baptist Church, et cetera. So I think there's a good sounding board there, and I think starting with them, but always keeping the mayor and city council abreast of those discussions is imperative to a successful project. What we end up doing could have a range of options. I don't know. We listed a few of them that the commission has identified over the years. This is before some of you were on the commission and now on the commission yourself. But I just think it's important that as development pressures start to rise, we be in front of them, not behind.
Anyone else for any questions or discussion? All
Thank you.
those in favor say yes.
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 All those opposed say no. It has passed. How large a portion of Westland Acres is in Wildwood? I know part of it's in Wildwood and part of it is in Chesterfield. I don't know how.
Exercise. It actually is almost 50-50.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, entity about a potential development proposal and brought proposals both to Chesterfield and Wildwood. Both communities approved these proposals. And at that time, we were able to kind of memorialize things that would protect the community's history and even advance some of the things that the community wanted. That project, unfortunately, by the time it was all said and done, at least in terms of approvals, the Great Recession started and it just fell by the wayside. But I think we have an opportunity to do something without necessarily development driving it.
Thank you. The second item is election of officers for 2023. Robin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So back in December, unfortunately, department personnel made an oopsie and we forgot to have our chair appoint a nomination committee for our 2023 elections. So tonight, before I even begin with my presentation, can we please have a motion to ratify Chair Stevens' appointment to members Secretary Bockert, Commissioner Roughton, and Vice Chair Scott to this nomination committee?
Jim? There's a
I'll
second.
second.
Chris.
Okay, thank you. According to our HPC.
We need to vote on.
Oh,
this.
I'm sorry. Whoops, another oopsie.
Is there any discussion or question on this? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. It has carried. Now you may proceed.
I'm like, I'm turning into my mother. She every time it's my turn to play in sequence is the game we were playing just the other night. Every time it was my turn, she would skip me. She's just so ready to go. Anyway.
That shows enthusiasm.
Very enthusiastic. So anyway, according to our HPC bylaws, this meeting, the January meeting of the commission is where we do elect our officers for 2023, who then take their seat at our meeting next month in February. So our nomination committee did meet on December 15th. No, they did not meet all day. I will make the correction to the minutes. They ended the meeting at 10:11. So we had a very sincere discussion for 11 minutes. During this discussion, Ms. Stevens was nominated nominated by the nomination committee to serve as chair again for this next year. Let's see, Mr. Secretary Bockert was nominated to the vice chair position, and Commissioner Roughton was nominated to secretary. And as usual, they showed appropriate humility and embarrassment that the nomination committee was essentially nominating themselves. However,
It shows if you want to be an officer, volunteer for the nominating committee.
well, in their defense, your chair did recommend these members. They didn't recommend themselves, so we can give that to them. But there are your nominations. So Chair Stevens for chair, Secretary Bockert for vice chair, and Commissioner Roughton for secretary. Now, it is in your right to accept these nominations, to vote on them one by one, to vote on them as a slate, or make additional nominations from the floor this evening. And I believe I've covered it. All right.
Discussion?
Do Tracy weigh in on this?
Yes,
Oh.
you're legal now. So what is Joe?
Madam Chair, respectfully, I would ask that you say, are there any other nominations from the floor tonight? If not, is there a motion to accept the nominating committee's recommendation?
Are there any other nominations for any of the positions this evening? Okay, then we want a motion to go with the slate of presented tonight. Need a motion.
Oh,
Tracy?
Oh,
Hey, is there a second?
I second it.
Steve seconds. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Then we have
Very
elected
good.
the slate.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the confidence that you placed in me to continue. I do enjoy it, and it keeps me on my toes. And sometimes I need some of that. But it's a great group to work with, and it's so pleasant to deal with a group where you don't have people at each other, and we don't have that in this group. And I don't know if it's a result of who was selected to be on here for their terms or what it was. But you're on for a while and then you have to leave. And unfortunately, coming up, Steve was going to have to be replaced because he's been with us the longest of anybody else on the commission.
Been here a while.
But we really appreciate the insight that you bring into the group, and we're going to miss you, but we still have you for what, 2-3 more months.
Yeah, I think April or something like that.
So very good. So thank you very much, and welcome aboard to the other new officers in their positions. It's a fun group to work with, and it's really great. Other matters, 2 items. Celebrating 20-year anniversary as a certified local government designation. Joe, I saw you back there with that certificate a little bit ago.
Well, I was trying to convince Ms. Keefe. She was kind enough to include it in the packet. I would have forgotten it, but as you can see, we celebrated our 20th anniversary as a certified local government. And I think both Ms. Keefe, Mr. Newberry, and I would like to thank you. Without your support, we would not have been able to maintain that designation. And that designation, I think, is very important. And we are one of the first really to get that designation. There are now a number of communities, but back in the early 2000s, it was a slim bunch, and we were one of the first to get on board. So thank you all for continuing your work and making that possible. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. A lot of it goes back to the work that the staff does.
Okay.
Upcoming training opportunities. I was telling Robin this evening that I received an email this afternoon, late afternoon, that they were sorry I was not able to participate in the webinar. And I was there. They had to know I was there. I logged in.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal was, but I was there.
Well, as I told Chair Stevens, anytime that should happen to one of you, please just let me know. We have a very good relationship with our CLG coordinator. And I don't think anyone's going to doubt your honesty and that you attended a training. But speaking of our certified local government designation, one of the requirements in order to maintain good standing as a CLG is that you do complete one training per year within the reporting period per year. And then these trainings really enhance our work as a commission because it provides us with some additional expertise about the matters that we are involved in. One such opportunity just occurred, so thank you if you did participate in that. But we do have an upcoming opportunity next Thursday. I can send out the email again. It was also included online with the agenda packet. The reason I didn't include it this evening is because it had a bunch of links in it and you kind of need the link in order to register. But the topic is design review with limited resources, working without professional preservation staff. It is a good topic for this commission because as much as I may be trying to learn more and more all the time, my professional expertise is not actually in the historic preservation field. It's an allied field. Urban planning is certainly allied, but I don't bring that eye to the work. So this is probably a very good session for the commission. And additionally, it provides, oh gosh, what is it? The American Institute of Architects credit and AICP credit. So my credit. So there's an additional incentive to participate on this in this free online training because you also receive professional credit for it if you belong to those organizations. So that is scheduled for February 2nd, which is next Thursday. I will send the email out one more time to remind you, but that would probably be a good one for this
What time?
commission.
I thought it was earlier.
Yeah, I believe it's at noon, if I'm not mistaken, Central Time. Yeah, I have 12 p.m. Central Standard Time here. Well, you certainly get extra credit in my eyes, Ms. Quarternick.
Well, if you aren't able to attend that one, will it be up for viewing later, like this last one is?
I believe this one is delivered by a different entity, so I can reach out and ask them if it will. So far, we've been pretty successful in getting later presentations. But yes, I'll follow up on that and
Okay,
I'll let
thank
you
you.
know what comes back.
That's Groundhog's Day.
If I may, on the this past week was tax credit for historical preservation and renovation. And it was a national program. It didn't speak specifically about Missouri. Missouri does have a program, but it appears that and it qualifies for single family too, or residential. It doesn't have to be commercial. It can be nonprofit and can be residential. But there are other qualifications of it being on the historical register, being in historical districts. And I just wonder, is there something, and we have the historical district of Pond.
Mhm.
I believe that's the only historical district we have. And is there something?
Well, just note that the Historic District of Pond is not on the National Register. I believe that was a local designation as part of our town
So-
center.
But it's always been a problem of trying to get people to register their property and to give them some incentive to restore their property instead of tearing the buildings down. And I just wonder is there something in here that the city can do or we can do to get these places, get these historical districts maybe enlarged or included and somehow qualify for Missouri? And again, while the thing was going on, I was on my other screen pulling up the Missouri requirements and trying to read those and listen to the thing. So I'm not too clear exactly what the requirements are in Missouri, but I do think if we could look into that a little more, find out what it is there some more incentive we can give people to restore their historical properties, their historical buildings?
So I think that's a very good question. And perhaps one thing I can do is update our webpage or, maybe even have a designated webpage that gives information on the various tax credits available. And then do potentially a one pager that summarizes it. But in the near term, as we have that discussion, what I can do is put on my task list to send out some very specific bullet points of each program so that you know what our Missouri program does and does not do. And I do believe that at Celebrate Wildwood this past year, I developed packets specifically, that had all the information about tax credits, about various historic preservation agencies in the state. And it was like specifically targeting people who might take advantage of those programs to restore historic properties. This year, we didn't have as many interested people in that kind of information. I will say the year before, I feel like I would have handed out a few packets because we did have interested people who were asking me specifically about historic real estate. But I do have that available. So if I do get a question directed to me at the city, I actually do have a large folder of information I can then give them that gives information about our tax credit programs as well as other information as well.
You can be credit your state income tax. You could accredit against that for
Yes.
you restoring your property.
And the tool that we have to help is that through our historic preservation fund that's administered by SHPO, and a certain percent of it is dedicated towards us as a certified local government. One of the eligible projects for that funding is specifically nominations to the historic register. So as a public entity, we can partner with a private one to help facilitate that nomination process. So that is one tool that we have available to us, which then opens the door to them for these tax credit programs. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
But it was a very informative. I sat in on that presentation as well, and it was very informative and well done training that convinced me of just how impactful these tax credits really are if someone's serious about rehabilitating historic real estate.
Because often someone will say, well, what's in it for me to fix it up and put it on a registry of sorts? What do I get out of it? If I'm not going to get anything, I'm not going to bother. So it's
That's sort of what I've
education.
been sitting on in my house. It's not, I'm not registered under anything, and why should I?
Yeah, I think especially as a voluntary program like the one that we have as a commission, education is the critical piece.
One of your many hats. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? Dan?
Okay. Is there additional interest in that from this commission?
Quite sure I understood. Oh, oh,
Did we ever get all of that approved as to what the requirements were to have a name? Okay, I wasn't sure if it was always had been finalized. I think that's wonderful.
Is there direction from this commission?
Yeah, I make a motion that we make Paul our very first reward recognition recipient.
Seconded by Jim. Any discussion or question?
Maybe if someone does attend the event on February 5th, they could just mention that this is in the works, you know, to his family and friends that are there.
Maybe we could have an official letter for the family that this is going to be taking place. Would that be in order?
Well, sir, Paul and his contributions to the city. So I guess I would like to coordinate those two if possible. And so that we're not overlapping or stepping on each other's toes. So certainly as a motion tonight, we do have our program that we spent a great deal of time working on. But I would just ask that we first consult with the mayor and city council before we get too far along.
Thank you. Robin,
I believe there was a motion.
we have a motion.
yes.
Any other discussion? Alan? No?
Have somebody else. I'll
Okay.
wait.
Wait your turn, right? All those in favor say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Anyone no? It has passed. Now,
Okay.
Alan, you had something else?
Yeah, just at the outset of the meeting, we talked about in your presentation, the necessity to probably, I guess, to probably develop a phase program for the park. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be wise for us to make some contact with our architect and ask him to give us some prioritization for how that might be done in his mind. You know, we all have our pet things that are in the plan and that we might want to see happen. But I'd be real interested in what he would have to say and what might be most appropriate to put in there first and last from his vantage point as a developer. And I think we'd be missing the boat if we don't do that at the outset before we go into deciding what it was we think should be there. I'd like to hear what he thinks ought to be the order of development.
And I believe that would be part of their process.
Good.
We've already gone through a pretty substantial public planning process as far as developing the concept to date and creating a phase one concept. He would be providing that expertise to us as we go along in that process.
Super.
But I will certainly make sure that that is done.
Yeah,
at
that was
the-
my
at
only
the
concern
front.
is just
Mhm.
thought.
Anyone else? Well, I want to thank you tonight for a really good meeting. We had a lot of things to deal with. And I feel like we are making progress, and that's what it's all about. Our next meeting will be on February the 23rd. Same place, same time. Anyone else have any comments before we close? I'm open for a motion.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded by Steve and by Chris that we adjourn. All those in favor, say yes.
Yeah.
Anyone opposed? You want to spend the night?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as Paul always said, this is the fun group to work with.